I still remember the ping, not loud, almost dismissible, but it landed at 2:11 a.m. on the cloud chat. I had been half asleep, drifting, then jarred awake when my phone lit up on the nightstand. I glanced over. Marion's name. My heart stuttered. That shouldn't have been there. Then something tiny changed everything. I opened the thread. She was messaging Cal, someone from the arts circle she ran workshops with. The tone wasn't casual. The way she typed, how she checked back minutes later, even emojis she'd never used with me. It felt intimate. Too intimate. I closed the app, hands trembling. The room was quiet, too quiet. I stared at the ceiling, parsing every memory we'd built. If you'd asked me 5 years ago whether our marriage had cracks, I would have laughed. We had routines. Saturday morning coffee on the porch, trips to that lake cabin, joint gardening in spring. I thought we were solid. Marion taught painting part-time at the community studio. I managed property maintenance for the homeowner association. Our kids had moved on decades ago. Now it was just the two of us, comfortable in middle age, with the occasional travel and friends from church. But somewhere around year 31, cracks whispered. She started locking her studio door from the inside. She began carrying her phone everywhere. Weekends, she said, were for solo art or planning. I shrugged it off. Artists need space, I told myself. One evening, she said she'd stay late at the studio. She kissed me, pressed lips soft, said, "Don't wait up." I nodded. But something in her eyes, furtive, lodged in my gut. I tried to brush it off. That night, I caught her checking her smartwatch, blinking at her wrist. My heart pounded. She rarely looked at it in front of me. Why now? Then came the cloud chat ping in the witching hour. I felt betrayed, sick, furious, but also convinced there must be an explanation. Maybe it was a project, a colleague needing help. I told myself that while I sat there, frozen, holding the phone as though it contained a verdict. What I didn't see yet, how far this would go. I closed my eyes, trying to summon calm. I replayed our anniversary dinner from a month ago, her voice quivering over wine glass, her asking if we were drifting apart. I shrugged and said no, I believed her. But at 2:11 a.m., a message shattered that faith. I slipped out of bed, walked down the hall. The house was dark, silent. The only sound, my own ragged breathing. I paused outside her studio door, listening. No voices. I backed away. I didn't knock. I couldn't. I returned to the bedroom and sat on the edge of the bed, phone in hand, mind spinning. Who is Cal? What is this? How many nights have I slept beside her while she typed to him? I knew then this wasn't a simple misunderstanding. The question loomed, how long has this been happening? After that night, I couldn't unsee it. Something had cracked wide open, and now, everything she did seemed filtered through a new lens. Marion still kissed me good morning. Still asked if I wanted tea. But I saw it now, the split-second hesitation before she looked up from her phone. The way she turned the screen just slightly away. And I kept quiet. For 3 days, I said nothing. I needed to be sure. Not just suspicious. I wasn't going to accuse my wife of 33 years based on a few emojis and a 2:11 a.m. ping. So I watched. And I waited. That Friday, she said she had an art board meeting downtown. It was supposed to last 2 hours. I offered to drive her, she declined. Said she needed to stop at the studio first. I waited until she pulled out of the driveway, then opened her desktop in the study. She rarely used it anymore, preferred her tablet, but I knew she hadn't fully logged out of her cloud chats. I was right. The messages were still there. Archived in a thread labeled simply, SC. Cal. He wasn't just a fellow art volunteer. he was something else entirely. His last message, sent around midnight the day before, read: "Still thinking about Sunday. You smelled like oil paint and cinnamon. Miss you already." And her reply: "Can't wait till Tuesday. I keep replaying the way you touched my hair. My heart's still fluttering. I don't know how long I sat there, staring. I don't even remember breathing. All I know is my hands went cold." My wife, the woman who always said she didn't like clingy messages, who mocked the idea of texting sweet nothings, was writing poetry to another man. Then something else caught my eye. Photos. Not explicit, but personal. Her in the studio, hair down. A candid mirror shot, smiling in that way she hadn't smiled at me in years. Another of a coffee cup with 2 straws. Always timestamped late. Always right before she came home with paint on her jeans. That's when the math started to work against her. The extra hour after her classes. The new blouse she bought and didn't mention. The nights she said she was too tired and went to bed early, clutching her tablet like a shield. I thought I knew pain. I'd lost a brother once. Watched my father pass too young. But this was a different kind of death. A slow, quiet erasure of everything I believed we were. And yet, part of me still wanted to be wrong. I printed out a handful of the messages. Folded them quietly. Slipped them into the envelope we used for mortgage receipts. I couldn't explain why. Maybe I needed something solid in my hands, proof that I wasn't losing my mind. That night, I made dinner. Roasted chicken, her favorite. She ate in silence, said she was a little worn out. I nodded. Inside, I was unraveling. After she went to bed, I stayed in the garage. Just sat in the truck, doors closed. No music. No light. Just me and the faint smell of oil and dust. That's when I found myself gripping the steering wheel, jaw clenched so hard it hurt. How could she? After 3 decades, 2 kids, 5 jobs, 10 vacations, and hundreds of late-night talks on the porch swing, how could she throw it all away for stolen afternoons and clever emojis? Then something tiny changed everything. The following morning, Marion asked if I'd seen her grey cardigan. I said no. But then she turned and added, "I think I might have left it at the studio. Cal borrowed my car the other day, maybe he saw it." I froze. This was the first time she said his name out loud. Deliberate? A slip? Either way, it jolted me. So they were that close. Borrowing cars now. Casual enough to mention him mid-breakfast. I said nothing. Just nodded. My spoon clinked the bowl, louder than it should have. Later that day, I drove to the studio. I told myself I was picking up supplies for a side project, a lie to no one but myself. It was empty. The lights were off. But I peeked through the back window and saw it. 2 mugs. Side by side on the workbench. One with lipstick smudged. The other with a chipped handle, the one I remembered from our old house. They were building a little world, just for them. Right under my nose. I drove home in silence. No radio. No hum. Just the roar in my head. And one question, how much longer was she going to pretend? I used to think gut instinct was just a figure of speech. Now I know it can keep you up at night. That Sunday, Marion said she'd spend the afternoon prepping for the exhibition. I nodded, but something in her tone didn't match the words. Too casual. Too smooth. Like someone rehearsing a script they'd used many times before. She left around 2 p.m. 5 minutes later, I opened the messaging app again. New messages. 2 of them. One from him. One from her. Cal, I can't wait to see that blue dress again. Marion, don't tempt me. I'm already smiling like an idiot. I stared at the screen for a long time. It wasn't the words that broke me. It was how easy they seemed. How soft. How practiced. They'd built their own rhythm, a private language that didn't belong to me. Then something tiny changed everything. For weeks, I'd been tiptoeing, collecting fragments like a coward afraid to face the truth. But that moment? That moment snapped something inside me. I was done pretending not to see. I copied the entire chat history into a hidden folder on my laptop. Screenshots, dates, locations, even the times she left home. I was methodical. Cold. Focused. She thought I was passive. She had no idea who I was when cornered. Around 5:30 p.m., I parked a few blocks from the studio. I didn't want to be seen. The wind was crisp, dry leaves skating across the sidewalk. Riverside Glen was quiet on Sundays. Most people were at church picnics or sitting on porches. I walked toward the back of the building. There was a narrow alley that led to the rear entrance. The one students never used. I saw it then. Her car. Parked crooked. Like someone who rushed to get inside. I didn't storm in. I didn't want a shouting match in a hallway. I just leaned against the fence, listening. Through the half-open window, I heard laughter. Not the polite chuckle she used with me. A lighter one, the kind she used when we first started dating. Then came a whisper. His voice. Low, close. Her answering him with a soft "stop it," but in that warm, delighted way that said she didn't want him to stop. Every sound was a nail in the coffin. I stood there for what felt like hours. My chest burned, but my face stayed still. I didn't give myself permission to break. When the door finally opened, it wasn't loud or dramatic. Just the small creak of hinges. Marion stepped out first, her scarf loose around her neck, cheeks flushed. Cal followed, close behind, like a man who knew his place in a secret. They didn't see me. She touched his hand briefly. Not long. Not enough to look like more to a stranger. But I knew her tells. 33 years teaches you those. I turned and walked away before either of them noticed. My heart wasn't shattered in that moment. It was sharpened. That night, she slipped into bed next to me like nothing had happened. Hair damp from a late shower. A faint hint of his cologne on her sweater. Not enough for anyone else to notice. But I wasn't anyone else. I lay still. Long day? I asked, my voice steady. Yeah, she said. Exhausting. The prep's taking forever. She was lying. Smoothly. Effortlessly. I stared at the ceiling and realized I didn't even recognize her voice anymore. Then something small but deliberate happened as she reached over and rested her hand on my chest, like she used to. But it wasn't real. It was a placeholder. A performance. I didn't push her away. I didn't pull her closer either. I was already gone. The next morning, I drove her to the grocery store. I insisted. She didn't suspect a thing. While she was inside, I opened the glove compartment. Sure enough, there was a small note tucked inside a folded flyer. Her handwriting. Tuesday. 6:30, same place. I folded it back exactly the way I found it. Calm. Careful. I no longer had questions. I had evidence. I pulled up the calendar on my phone. Marked the date. Tuesday at 6:30. Same place. That would be the moment I'd stop watching and start acting. The game had shifted. Tuesday. 6:30 p.m. I remember everything about that evening. The weight of the air. The faint scent of damp leaves on the pavement. The way the sun slid down behind the tree line like it knew something was about to end. I parked 1 block from the studio. Same as before. Except this time, I wasn't just watching. I was waiting. At 6:24, her car pulled up. She stepped out in that same soft blue dress she wore on our last anniversary dinner. The one she said she kept for special nights. Apparently, they were special. Just not ours. I stayed hidden, hands steady on the steering wheel, watching her slip inside. A minute later, a dark SUV arrived. Cal. He strolled in like a man who owned the place. Jacket slung over one shoulder. No hesitation. They thought they were alone. They weren't. I walked to the rear door, slow and measured. My heartbeat wasn't frantic anymore. It was like a metronome. Controlled. I'd already had my breakdown in silence days before. Tonight was for clarity. The hallway smelled faintly of turpentine and coffee. I could hear them through the studio wall, low voices, soft laughter. A clink of mugs. Familiar routine. Then something tiny changed everything. Cal said, "You always look better in that dress here." Marion laughed. Not the nervous kind. The warm, easy kind I hadn't heard directed at me in years. It was like listening to a version of her I no longer knew. I stepped forward and opened the door. The sound of the hinges startled them. Marion froze mid-laugh, her hand still resting lightly on his forearm. His smile fell away like a mask ripped off too soon. For a heartbeat, no one spoke. Then she whispered, "Eli." I didn't yell. I didn't throw anything. I just looked at them, both of them, and said evenly, "So this is the art meeting?" The silence that followed was heavier than any scream. Cal stepped back first. A small, guilty shuffle. Marion's face flushed deep, like the air had been sucked out of the room. She tried to fix her hair, nervous reflex. Always did that when caught in a lie, even small ones. "I can explain," she said. "No," I cut in. "You can't explain 33 years away in one sentence." Her mouth opened, closed. No sound. Cal tried to speak. "Eli, maybe this isn't." I turned to him slowly. "You might want to shut your mouth right now." He did. I wasn't shaking. I wasn't crying. I was eerily calm. I'd already walked through the storm in my head. "I know everything," I said. The messages. The late nights. The little love notes in the glove box. Every single one. She blinked hard. "You went through my things?" "I went through my life," I replied. She took a small step forward, like that would undo what I'd seen. "Eli, it's complicated." I laughed once, sharp and dry. "No, Marion. Complicated is raising 2 kids on 1 income. Complicated is fixing the roof after a storm. What this is," I gestured between them, "is betrayal wearing a blue dress." She flinched like I'd struck her. But it wasn't cruelty. It was truth. "I didn't mean for it to happen," she whispered. I tilted my head. "And yet here you are. 6:30 sharp. Just like your little note said." Cal shifted uncomfortably. He muttered something about leaving. I didn't stop him. I actually wanted him gone, not because he was dangerous, but because he was irrelevant. He wasn't the storm. She was. Marion reached for my arm. "Please don't walk away. Just talk to me." I stepped back. Her hand hovered in midair like she finally realized how far away I'd gone. Not in steps. In years. Then something subtle shifted in her eyes, panic. Not the kind that comes from guilt. The kind that comes from understanding you've lost control. I gave you 33 years of my life, I said quietly. And you gave him our Tuesday nights. Her lips parted, but no sound came out. Her eyes watered. I felt nothing. Not cruelty. Not vengeance. Just a hollow clarity. I'm not here to fight, I said. I'm here to tell you what happens next. She whispered, Eli. I've already talked to a lawyer. The house will be split. The accounts, too. I've taken screenshots of everything. I don't need your confession. I already have the truth. Her face drained of color. Why didn't you just ask me? She finally choked out. I exhaled slowly. Because the moment I saw that message at 2:11 a.m., I realized I'd been asking you for years. You just stopped answering. The studio was silent except for the faint ticking of the wall clock. Every second sounded like a hammer. Then something tiny changed again. She whispered, I still love you. I stared at her for a long moment. No, Marion. You love who I used to be when you still respected me. I turned and walked toward the door. She followed 2 steps, then stopped. Maybe it hit her that I wasn't bluffing. That this wasn't a fight we could wallpaper over with apologies. As I reached for the handle, she said softly, What happens now? I didn't turn around. No. I said. Now I stop being the only one holding this marriage together. And then I left her standing there, in the same blue dress she'd once worn for me, while the man she chose over me slipped out the back door like a coward. That was the night the marriage died out loud. People think the explosion is the hard part. It's not. The silence after, that's where the damage lives. The morning after I confronted Marion, I didn't sleep in the house. I spent the night at our son's empty rental across town. He was between tenants, and I had the spare key. A couch, a blanket, and a long night staring at the ceiling. The next morning, I drafted the email. It wasn't angry. It wasn't dramatic. Just simple, clear, factual. I told our kids that their mother had been unfaithful. That I had evidence. And that I was taking steps to separate. I didn't ask for sides. I didn't beg for understanding. I just gave them the truth, because someone had to. Then something tiny changed everything. Our daughter replied within 10 minutes. 2 words, I'm coming. She showed up at the rental that evening, red eyes, jaw set like stone. She hugged me harder than she had in years. She told me some vague version last night, she said. Said you were overreacting. I told her if she didn't come clean, I'd stop speaking to her. I didn't ask her to do that. But I appreciated it more than she knew. By Thursday, the ripple effects hit wider. Marion had told her sister, and the version she spread was, let's just say, creatively edited. According to her, we were having distance issues, and I'd violated her privacy by going through her messages. Convenient. I didn't respond. I didn't need to. Because by the weekend, Cal's name had leaked, and someone from the Arts Council made a quiet call. Apparently, Cal's wife had no idea. Yeah. He was married too. Turns out Marion wasn't just someone's affair. She was someone's wake-up call. On Monday, I went back to the house. Not to talk. To gather what was mine. Marion was home. She looked like she hadn't slept. She tried to start a conversation, her voice cracked on every sentence. I didn't interrupt. I just packed. When I moved to the garage to grab tools, I noticed something on the bench, a stack of framed photos she'd removed from the walls. Us at the lake. The kids' graduations. An anniversary in the Adirondacks. She had taken them down. I turned, said flatly, trying to erase the past doesn't fix the present. She looked up, eyes rimmed red. I didn't want to pretend. You didn't seem to mind pretending with him, I said. She didn't argue. That was the last real conversation we had. 3 weeks later, I was in my lawyer's office, finalizing the separation documents. Marion had agreed to mediation. Maybe it was guilt. Maybe it was survival instinct. But here's what surprised me. She wanted to remain friends. Friends? This from the woman who lied to my face, who shared our bed while texting someone else goodnight. I told her, we were partners for 3 decades. You ended that. What's left isn't friendship, it's paperwork. She didn't respond. Then something tiny changed one more time. A church pastor called. He wanted to check in. Said Marion had spoken to him. That she was devastated and seeking redemption. I asked him, did she tell you how many months this went on? Or just the last 10 minutes? He was quiet for a beat. Then he sighed. I just wanted you to know she's hurting too. I replied, so is a thief when they get caught. I didn't attend the next community barbecue. Neither did she. But word got around. In towns like Riverside Glen, word always does. By month's end, Cal had been quietly removed from the theater board. His wife had filed papers. Marion stopped teaching temporarily, something about needing time for personal reflection. And me? I slept through the night for the first time in weeks. No beeps. No whispers. No pretending. Just silence, the honest kind. The house is quiet now. The photos are gone. The drawers hold only what I own. The bed is half full, but not empty. I didn't just leave Marion. I left the version of myself who thought silence was strength. The separation was finalized 6 weeks after that Tuesday. Clean split. No court. No public spectacle. Just a dozen signatures and 2 tired people pretending they still shared something worth salvaging. She asked again if we could talk. I said no. It wasn't anger anymore. It was math. You don't try to fix a boat after it's already at the bottom of the lake. She cried. I didn't. A month later, I sat at the lake cabin. Alone. We'd bought it 15 years ago as a place to grow old together. Now, it was just mine. She signed her half over without protest. Maybe guilt had a dollar value after all. I brought a box of old photos with me. Sat on the porch, sorting through them. One stuck out. Us, 20 years younger. Laughing on a hiking trail. Her hair in a messy bun, my arm wrapped around her. No phones. No secrets. I didn't rip it up. I didn't frame it either. I just set it aside and stared at the water. Then something tiny changed everything. My phone buzzed. Not a text. A calendar reminder. Anniversary, 34 years. I turned it off. Not deleted. Just silenced. That night, I cooked dinner for myself. Real food. Set the table. Lit a candle. I didn't do it for symbolism. I did it because I'm still here. She took something from me, yes. But she didn't take me. I joined a local woodworking group. Started building again. Something about using your hands, no screens, no chat apps, no late-night pings, felt like therapy. Our daughter visited one weekend. She brought her son. My grandson. We sat on the porch swing I'd built 20 years ago. She asked me, "How are you, Really? I looked at her and said, lighter. Not better. Not worse. Just lighter. She nodded. Do you hate her? She asked. No, I said. I miss the woman I married. But I don't hate the woman she became. I just won't follow her there. There's this myth people believe, that if you're with someone long enough, betrayal is unthinkable. That's not true. What's true is this: if you let silence linger too long, someone else starts filling in the blanks. Marion stopped talking to me long before she started texting Cal. But I stopped asking too. We both went quiet, and then she found noise somewhere else. That doesn't excuse it. But it explains how a 33-year love story can rot in the middle and still look whole from the outside. I don't know if I'll date again. I don't need to. Because I'm already building something, not with someone, but within myself. Forgiveness isn't about letting her off the hook. It's about taking the hook out of my own skin. And freedom? It's a Tuesday night without dread. It's sleeping with the window open and no secrets echoing in the dark. What I learned? Silence is not peace. Loyalty doesn't mean staying, it means knowing when to leave with dignity. You can love someone and still outgrow the lies they choose. Marion didn't just lose me. She lost the last person who ever saw her without judgment. I didn't lose a wife. I found a truth I'd been afraid to face. I'm worth honesty. And now, I live like I believe it.